Phoenix Rising is the new for 2024 B&M Family Invert coaster, the first of its kind to open up outside of China. It's located at Busch Gardens Tampa and is one of currently 9 roller coasters in operation. It replaced their old Wild Mouse coaster, Sand Serpent, as well as an Intamin looping starship called Phoenix. So naturally, its successor is the Phoenix Rising from the ashes, taking the form of this brand new roller coaster, a type that most of us have never experienced before. I was super intrigued to try this for my first time. I'd never experienced either of the ones in China, and the layout reminded me of the B&M Family suspended coasters that have been popping up all over, and I really enjoy those attractions. I had the opportunity to experience Phoenix Rising now multiple times, try out the front row, back row, all over, and in this review, I'm going to tell you about that ride experience, because I certainly have a lot of thoughts, and not all of them are great. Upon initial glance, Phoenix Rising seems like a great addition to Busch Gardens. Following the closure of Sand Serpent and now Scorpion, they're lacking in the family market. Aside from their kids coaster, their primary family coaster is Cobra's Curse. Everything else could be considered thrill or high thrill. And Phoenix Rising stands with a low height requirement, 42 inches. That means kids of all ages are going to be able to get on this thing. And it's located in the Pantopia section of the park, bringing new life into an area that already looked great, but now you have these swooping turns of this family invert coaster that just brings this new energy. It looks nice when you're walking up. They position the entrance directly below this large overbanked turn, so riders are quite literally going over your head. Especially for a young kid, that is a wow moment. I loved how it looked in the concept art, and seeing it in real life, fantastic execution. Their old Wild Mouse coaster was quite ugly and a not very interesting ride experience, so this is already a huge upgrade. One thing though that I was immediately caught off guard by was just how small the queue is. It's not a long walk to the station. I don't think they're planning on this being that popular of an attraction, but with a ride vehicle that only seats 20 people at a time and that's the only one, you honestly don't need that many people queuing up to form a long wait. For my first ever ride on Phoenix Rising, I waited 45 minutes. That was discouraging, especially since just upon initial glance, it seems like if they could have just extended the brake run a bit more, then they would have room to fit in a second train, and it bothers me that they didn't go for that option. I later returned to Busch Gardens Tampa on a weekday and was able to get many more rides in on it, most of them without a line, and so in that case, one train wasn't so bad, but Busch Gardens Tampa can get busy. And just because they had other rides in the park with one train, such as Tigress, does not mean that they should have just gone along with it and built another one with one train, because it is rather frustrating. I guess the good news is that it's not a super long ride experience, but I still found that consistently trains were being sent on average every 3.5 to 5 minutes, which averaged out to about 12 to 18 dispatches per hour. And that was not including the multiple breakdowns that we saw. Surprisingly, I know most B&M coasters are considered reliable. Maybe it's just because it was new, but Phoenix Rising kept on throwing some faults or something that it would go down for short periods of time. We'd wait it out and then it'd come back up, operate for a bit more, then go down again. It was odd. Hopefully that improves in the future, but I appreciate the little decor that they added to the queue to add some form of entertainment while you wait. Mostly Egyptian artifacts, but I think the real winner is when you actually get to the station and you see this huge screen behind the train. I genuinely don't think I've seen another roller coaster feature something like this. It's an interactive board that is in sync with the ride vehicle. So it'll show you 4 different Phoenix options, each based around the different elements, and it puts on a show when you dispatch and then likewise re-enter the station. It was an awesome addition and I applaud Busch Gardens for going for it. I just hope that they don't let it go, because I think about Mako's station, the shark swimming overhead effect that hasn't worked in forever. It was awesome when it initially opened, but then they just stopped caring. And I'm worried that this will be a similar situation, especially since they're already having issues with the onboard audio. Yes, Phoenix Rising is the first roller coaster at Busch Gardens Tampa to feature onboard sound, but unfortunately, it just didn't work that well. During my multiple rides, sometimes you could hear it, sometimes you wouldn't even know it was there. You're supposed to be able to hear it as you're going up the lift hill, and then the Phoenix will screech as you go over the drop. As you're traveling along the layout, you probably wouldn't notice it. I think it's sad because at this point in time, it's been open for less than a year. And so frankly, I think eventually this is just going to get turned off and it'll be like it never existed. Good attempt in theory, but complicated, and I'm not that surprised that it's having issues. Now, as you board your train, you'll choose one of 10 rows. There's the new B&M lap bars. They'll come down over your shoulders. Very, very similar to what is on Penguin Trek down at SeaWorld Orlando. It's a mostly comfortable lap bar. I feel like it's a little tight in the width. Like the edges will dig into your waist bone. I think it's to help with containment for smaller riders. But as an adult, I was like, could be better. I looked to the ones on the B&M Family Suspended Coasters, which have the same height requirement, and that's just all around more pleasant. But the seats are nice. Obviously, I recommend the front row for the view. The back, you'll get pulled through the maneuvers a bit more. But I think in general, I enjoyed the front the most, primarily because of how it rode. I'll get to that in a second. As you start up your lift, you'll turn right out of the station and climb up 80 feet in the air. It's a pretty fast lift hill. You aren't on it for very long at all. You reach the top, you're facing the Sky Ride and the Serengeti, and pass over a light dip. It's almost like the drop is broken up into two. It's a very gradual descent, and I think that's done on purpose. You know, I imagine this is going to be a lot of kids' first roller coasters, or one of their first. It's meant to be a mild experience. Your top speed is only 44 miles per hour. You'll feel that on this first bank turn, so as you go over that drop, you'll bank to the side, level out, and then twist the other direction, turning around to the left. You know what? There were some decent positives at the bottom of that drop, and it builds up more speed as you drop down and then rise back up underneath the lift hill, banking to the right. Phoenix Rising is primarily made up of these turns that angle your body sideways. It's very flowy. It's a well-designed experience in how it segues from one moment to the next. My only quarrel is I notice how it slows down at the apex of each turn, and it kind of feels like it doesn't have quite enough speed. As I was traveling along these moments, I just felt like it needed to go even a few miles per hour faster. Because on one hand, it's kind of a neat sensation that you'll stall out, but I believe that general flow would improve ever so slightly if there was more momentum. But following this bank turn underneath the lift hill is actually my favorite sequence on the ride. As you drop down, you have this fast switch to the right, and then you change directions rapidly into this overbank turn that goes out over the entrance. I really like how you change directions there, especially towards the front. You feel the speed in those valleys, and even a little bit of whip. Following this overbank, you'll drop back down, twisting to the right, banking down and around on this low turn. They dug out a little trench to add some extra clearance here. It's essentially this long extended helix as you gradually rise up and then twist to the left, bank up low to the ground, and then smoothly hit your brake run, and that is it. Only 1,831 feet of track. So again, not a long experience, but it's a solid layout. Not bad at all for a family coaster. Do I prefer this layout over maybe some of the B&M Family Suspended Coasters? What they do? I'm leaning towards no. I think the B&M Family Suspended Coasters have a bit more force to it and somehow are even more flowy, but the B&M layout was still very interesting. Obviously, it was custom made to the space, and I think they did a good job working with the constraints they had, because they could only build so far because you have the Sky Ride on one side, the theater on the other, the gift shop on this end, and then the pathway bumping up from where you need an entrance. There's only so much track you can fit in this area, and this space is a lot larger than that original Wild Mouse, so I think they made the most of it. But when I got off Phoenix Rising, I just kind of felt very meh about the whole thing, and I think it really just came down to how it rode. This is a new for 2024 roller coaster, and it's running like a ride that's been open for at least 10 years. And that is just sad to hear, especially since this ride is not a prototype. Yes, it's the first that most of us have ever experienced, but in theory, the kinks will have been worked out with the originals over in China, which leads me to believe that it's not a train design issue, it's genuinely just how the ride was manufactured. We live in a day and age where new B&M coasters are not as smooth as they used to be. The other B&M Invert in the same park that's over 20 years old is smoother than Phoenix Rising. That's not me trying to be mean, that's genuinely a true statement. I think it's either this as the roughest ride in the park now, or Kumba. If we're talking outside seats on Kumba, then that is definitely rougher. But inside seats on Kumba aren't too bad. And let me just clarify, Phoenix Rising doesn't have any headbanging, obviously, because of the lap bars. But you can 100% feel that shake side to side as you're traveling around, and it just shouldn't be that way because B&Ms used to be associated with quality. You knew you were getting one of the smoothest rides in the world when you bought one of these things, and Phoenix Rising just kind of feels cheaply built, especially the further back you go. Those last rows do not ride very well at all. Front is okay, it's fine. It's definitely the best seat on the ride. And it makes me wonder why this is the case. And I think there's too many factors to nail down a concrete answer, but my leading theory is that it has something to do with the alignment. Either the train alignment is off or the track alignment. If you look at this one turn at the end of the ride, you can see these white marks on the rails, which is usually a sign that something is not quite aligned. Like we're talking real small, like less than an inch. But you don't see these marks on any other turn, and that is not a coincidence because you can feel it when you're on it. I do also wonder if it's possible that the trains just need an improvement in their design. Like for instance, I know that the Vekoma family suspended coaster trains have vibration dampeners built in, which helps eliminate as much shake as possible, and you notice it. Those are some of the smoothest rides in the world. I know other B&M coasters have vibration dampeners in the bearings, and it didn't look like Phoenix Rising had any, but at the end of the day, does the general public care? I know my parents, who were a bit older, weren't a huge fan of it because they could really feel that vibration. But on the other hand, one time I rode and I sat in front of some kids, and when we hit the brake run, they were so excited and they immediately wanted to go again. They didn't seem to notice it at all. So I think it's going to really depend person to person. I'm the type of guy where this bothers me because in my opinion, this is an issue that should be solved and frankly shouldn't be happening considering the access that we have to technology nowadays. Every other manufacturer is figuring out how to make the rides as smooth as possible. And until B&M figures that out, I don't feel like their creations are going to be fully realized up to their full potential. And it's what has me worried about the new coaster going to Busch Gardens Williamsburg. The Big Bad Wolf, The Wolf's Revenge. The original Big Bad Wolf had a huge fan base. People loved that thing. And if the new one rides like Phoenix Rising, I think a lot of people are going to be really disappointed. So for Phoenix Rising's final score, I'm giving it a 5 out of 10. I put it right in the middle because I'm just kind of about the whole thing. It is an upgrade from the Wild Mouse, but I think as a family coaster, it just kind of misses the mark. I really just got off this thing wishing it was a Vekoma family suspended coaster. And if I worked for a park and I was looking to add a family coaster, specifically a family inverted coaster, after riding Phoenix Rising, it would seal my decision not to buy one. Which leads me to the point of, do I want to see more B&M family inverted coasters? If they ride like this, then no, not really. And it disappoints me to say that because my reason for not really caring for this is because, in theory, I should like this. All the right steps were taken to lead to what should be a good ride. Like the layout is fine, the location is good, it's pretty to look at. Yeah, I wish it had a second train. And not to mention, even if it was just a bit faster through the layout or like the onboard audio actually worked, but it's just these little things that when you put them all together leads me just going, you know, this should have been a lot better than it is. And that's really a shame. So if you find yourself at Busch Gardens Tampa and it's really busy, this is one of those rides that I would not prioritize. Plan on getting on the other big rides in the park, even the other B&M coasters, which I love. Montu and Kumba are some of my favorites. But if you have experienced Phoenix Rising, please let me know down in the comments below. What did you think of it? Do you agree with the points that I brought up? And if you think there's anything I missed, be sure to let me know. If you're new to the channel, I would also love if you could check out the Coaster Reviews playlist. There are reviews in there of rides from all across the world. It's all available in alphabetical order. Please go check it out and stay tuned for more here at Coaster Studios, and I'll see you next time.